Okay, new toy just arrived. We're going to do a real quick build video on this. Here's all the parts. Everything looks pretty good. No damage to anything in shipping. Step one is to loosen up the hinges. We want them loosey-goosey, not too stiff. Just bend the aileron back like that. This will stretch the hinges and kind of loosen them up a little. We'll let that set for a few hours. Much better. Glue the wing halves together. I'm going to use goop. I prefer it to CA, just much more flexible and much stronger. Now we install one of the carbon fiber wing spars. It's 1.5 millimeter. There's two of these supplied. It's got to be 70 millimeters back from the leading edge. And we make a little cut, 4 millimeters deep, the entire length of that carbon fiber rod. And we sand the carbon fiber rod a little bit just to roughen it up so the glue will stick a little better. And now we push the rod into the slit and glue it with CA. And we let that soak in a little. That's soaked in and dried. We can do the other side now. And the same thing on the top half. Want to cut a little slit, 4 millimeters deep, the length of the carbon fiber tube. And the top wing spar is done. Now we install the 1 by 200 millimeter carbon fiber rods along the end of the aileron. And it goes 150 millimeters over here, and I think it was 45 millimeters right in here, and only 2 millimeters deep. So we'll go ahead and install that. Rough it up a little with sandpaper and push it down into the slot. That's pushed in all the way. Do the same thing on the other end. Now we install the 2 by 8 millimeter wooden spar in the elevator and just pull out that little EPP strip like that, and then we'll go ahead and glue it with CA. Okay, just like that. And I used a couple of rubber bands here to just kind of hold the EPP up tight against that wooden spar. Then we go ahead and glue the bottom side of the spar also. Now we glue the horizontal stabilizer onto the fuselage. I'm going to use goop right in this area right here. And let that set up. Now we've got to drill some 2 millimeter holes in the landing gear here and down on the ends. And that looks like it's about 5/64. So we got our holes drilled up on top and also down on the bottom for the wheels. Now we glue these two little wooden pieces on here. Glued and clamped in position, and use CA on that. Push those two holes out. The landing gear support gets glued onto this piece, and I'm just going to go ahead and use goop. Now we glue the front part of the fuselage onto the leading edge of the wing. It's glued in place, and the pins are holding it secure while the glue sets up. Now we glue the aft part of the fuselage onto the trailing edge of the wing. I'll use goop for that. It's all glued. Okay, now we install these 1 millimeter rods along the sides of the fuselage here. And this is 6 millimeters in, little marks here, and 10 millimeters in here. We'll go ahead and cut a 3 millimeter deep channel there with a razor blade and go ahead and insert these two carbon fiber rods and glue them in. And we glue the carbon fiber rods along the side of the fuselage with CA. And the fuselage just splits in two like that. And I just test fit the bottom half of the fuselage, and I'm going to go ahead and glue that in place with goop. It's glued and pinned in place from the back side, and I'll let that set up and continue on. Now we glue these two little side strips of EPP along the sides of the fuselage on both sides. Now I'm going to go ahead and add the servo arm extensions onto the servo arms. Had to split the end of the extension a little bit to get it to fit onto my arm. Now we install the aileron servos. Had to cut this out a little bit right in here, and also for the flanges, put little slots in there. We'll prepare the aileron horns next. The aileron servo, the push rod, and the aileron horn are placed into position, and now I can cut a slot right in here so I can push that aileron horn down in there. What I need to do is make sure that we've got 90 degrees right here. I'm just using this as a sort of a template, and so we got that 90 degrees. We'll go ahead and cut that slot and install it. Servos are in place and the horns are installed in the ailerons, and I'm going to rough up the bottom of the horn where it inserts into that slot a little bit with sandpaper and go ahead and glue it in with goop. Now we install the tail skid. I'll go ahead and put a little slice in there and we'll install that. I like to add a little fiberglass to the motor mount just to beef it up, kind of keeps it from breaking later on. Install the motor onto the motor mount. Now we install the motor mount. Now I'm going to go ahead and glue this in place with goop. Next we install the landing gear. Landing gear is installed, and now we'll go ahead and screw it in. Now we install the rudder and elevator servos. And now we install the top half of the fuselage. It just fits right down in there like that. Okay, the top half of the fuselage is in place and glued on with goop. I'll let that set up overnight. Now I'm going to install the rudder. I'm going to use goop for that. Next is the elevator and rudder push rods. We're going to go ahead and install the Z-bends on the end using heat shrink tubing and super glue. Next we install the connectors onto the end of the rudder and elevator horns. Now we cut a slot in the rudder and install the rudder horn. Now the elevator servo horn goes on, and it fits right over the spar there. Now the elevator and rudder push rod guides go on to the push rods. Now we install the push rod guides into the fuselage. It's already cut out all along the horizontal part of the fuselage there. And we'll glue it in place with goop. Elevator guides are pushed in, and I'm just operating the elevator and make sure there's no binding. Seems pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and glue that in now with CA. Next we'll go ahead and install the wheels, and I'm going to leave the wheel pants off. Wheels are installed, and we'll go ahead and finish up our electronics now. And here's my receiver and my ESC. Now we install the side force generators on the wing, and they provide a little template here in between the two side force generators in order to space properly. And finally we install the SFGs for the rudder and elevator, and there's cutouts in order to get it aligned properly. Okay, the electronics are all connected, and it's all bound up to the transmitter, and servos are all adjusted. I've got other videos showing how to do that, so I didn't include it in this particular video. Empty weight came out to 390 grams and about 485 with the battery in it, and the CG is set to 240 millimeters behind the front of the plane per the manual, and seems spot on with the battery right there. I can always relocate that battery, move it up or back a little bit by increasing that slot if needed. And I've got my battery connector coming up from the bottom so I can connect to the top. So I think we're ready to go in this thing. Okay, we'll take a look at our control throws now. Here's the elevator up all the way to the cutouts, max. Same thing with the down. And now the rudder. Full left till it touches the elevator. And full right, same thing, max throws. And now the ailerons, left, right. Just did the Maiden and trimmed everything out, and the CG at 240 millimeters from the leading edge is perfect. So I went ahead and cut that out a little bit larger for the battery. It's more streamlined when it fits in there in line with the directional flight than crosswise. So that looks pretty good right there.